Rick Lilley here for Thomas Alan Pickups. I have my trusty guitar here that was a custom build that was made in the style of a Les Paul. And we're trying out the new humbucking vintage set that's just hot off the presses. There are two sets, a vintage and a classic. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on with these. The vintage is a little bit of a hotter wind, and I want to talk about the wind output. Pickups are sold often on the basis of their output, and I think the myth is that higher output is better. A lot of the boutique makers that make humbuckings, and single coils for that matter, have decided that they have been going a direction where it's lower output. And the nature of lower output, of course, is that I think, well, at least from my vantage point, I believe that they tend to sound bigger. Now, bigger is a funny word. It doesn't mean more volume. It means that it has more sort of texture in the mid-range. The proportion of bass to treble is equal. It's real clear. The higher you get output-wise, in a general sense, you get more high-end. Now, a lot of people think that's better if you're using gain. In my opinion, if you use more treble, more output, on a gaining amp like a Mesa or the lead channel of any number of good amps out there, you tend to get something that actually sounds thinner. Now, since we're talking about a vintage humbucking pickup, and the one that I had Jeff wind for me at Thomas Allen was what he calls a hotter wind. That isn't for more output in general. I wanted to get at something that you use with a real vintage Gibson guitar, whether it's a 345 or a Les Paul or any number of the great humbucking guitars. And that is like the old Eric Clapton sound, like the Joe Bonamassa sound. A lot of people don't realize that if you just turn down the treble on the so-called 50s wiring in a Les Paul, it has that old Eric Clapton cream sound. That sound was something that got me going when I was a kid. Because it's real clear on one hand, on the other hand it's very thick. It records really well. It sounds, by my definition, bigger. More output, unfortunately, tends to sound thinner. These pickups are far less dependent on pedals for gain, because there's a whole lot of sound. If I turn the pickup down, it sounds clean and clear for rhythm guitar, and the chordal sound is nice and thick and clear, unlike a whole lot of humbuckings that we see on the marketplace. Now I have my trusty JCM 800 combo here, a 50 watt amp. I think it's, probably my favorite amp I've ever had. I've had many. I just love this thing. For an open back cabinet to have that much clear low end, I'm not hitting any pedals. I have a couple set up here. I'm not using them. I can turn this guitar down and get a clean, clear, twangy sound. Roll the treble off and I get something that sounds like old Eric Clapton cream. Now, these pickups are not wax potted. Wax potting is something that people and manufacturers do because if you're using a super high gain application and sticking the pickup right in the face of the amplifier like I'm doing right now, you can come up with something that's microphonic. That is not a quality issue. That's just the nature of gain and particular winds of pickups. Now, you can wax pot them and it'll shut down that microphonic quality. We don't wax pot these pickups because there's a more open vintage sound to them. You can get them wax potted by request. But let's just say that in a general sense, most of the vintage guys don't like wax potted pickups, and most of the boutique makers that sell expensive humbuckings don't do it. Some of the bigger manufacturers, like the one that starts with an S and ends with a D, do wax pot on a lot of stuff so that they can sell them at every big store and box store that they can sell them at, and then they're not having them returned under warranty because people are using, you know, in a metal band or something. I mean, in a metal band, you probably don't want a vintage sounding pickup unless you're using less gain. Like I said, we're talking about a situation for blues, kind of maybe a more purist sound. Let's get back to this guitar and the sound of the pickups on this. That was the treble pickup I was using. I have always been a basically treble pickup guy. And I either like a guitar or don't because I like the sound of it. And I love the top end of these Thomas Allen pickups because they have a sweet treble. Twangy. I turn it up and it just gets liquid, and it's just the best, biggest, baddest, to me, my favorite tonality of a humbucking. That being said, a lot of guys like or don't like a Les Paul because they can get it to do a million things in the middle position. There are a lot of sounds available with these, and a lot of the makers that are making humbuckings, they don't do this. You can thin out with different combinations of treble and neck pickup to get something that sounds like a Telecaster. You know, you can get that real Zeppelin sound if you use a little bit more treble in the mixture. You know. It just sounds so big and broad. I'm not touching the pedal. My amplifier is a 50-watt amplifier up at about 50%. You know, that's something like I would use in a loud club. Frankly, I like pedals. I just don't want to be dependent on them. It's not like this guitar needs Band-Aids with these pickups in it because it twangs, it's clear. If I want to thicken it, I can use more volume. And I have a whole lot of detail in the tone controls because there's just such balance between the neck pickup and the treble pickup. I tend to, on a Les Paul myself, personally not use neck pickup by itself until I got this set. This set, it's possible. Now I want to say I'm using a treble bleed circuit on the neck pickup side so that I don't roll off all the treble when I turn it down. If you're familiar with that, it's a good idea. There are going to be links online to be able to, you know, answer questions about the treble bleed thing when it comes to Les Pauls. There's a number of different optional ways to wire these. But we're sticking as much to a vintage thing, except for that I wanted the neck pickup in this to be a little brighter when I turn it down. So here's the neck pickup by itself. I think it sounds fabulous. This is just the neck pickup. Kind of reminds me of old Johnny Winter. Pickups, I can just do little adjustments of volume to go between a rhythm sound and a real liquid lead sound. Like I said, I like my pedals for gain. I just don't need them to start with. This balanced set will sound good through a Fender amp. I'm using a Marshall. That tends to be my favorite. And I happened to play one in a club, this guitar in a club last night with a guy that was using a 2-rock and the other guy was using a Mesa Boogie, and they were all playing this guitar, and it was really, really great to see just how adaptive they are to. I think they sound good through every type of amp, clean, dirty, or whatever. Like I said, the microphonic thing, if you're using extra high gain is something you may want to get it wax potted, but that's not a big deal. The pickups are the best in the marketplace, in my opinion. They're also less expensive. They're I think that they're, when you look at the website, you'll see they're very reasonable. They're made of the highest quality components, and they are simply my favorite. This set of pickups has made me, for the first time in 30 years, really interested in humbucking style guitars again. I've been a Strat and a Telecaster guy for probably 30 years. Been playing about 50. These make me kind of look at it again. They do something that I really like a Les Paul or a 345 to do. We'll see you later. We have at some point we'll do a classic set demonstration, but this was the vintage set. That's the hotter wind, among other little details, and it was to my liking. So I adore them. I think they're the best. Thanks. Thomas Allen Pickups.